Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage, on a beautiful Saturday night. I am back. I went on a trip with my family for a week to Great Exuma Island. Flying, especially it seems today, is always interesting. The trip started out getting delayed in my own airport. Half an hour down the road for 8 hours. So all the plans we had to be changed. Fortunately, we had a layover in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was supposed to meet a friend of mine and go out to dinner. None of that happened. But we did make it to Great Exuma Island. Stayed with a friend all week. Completely different culture. Beautiful water and sand. You can't imagine. You can look at if you Google Great Exuma Island, and any water shots, it's the color of Dawn dish soap, if not even lighter blue than that. It's simply beautiful and amazing. So we did get to meet up with my friends in Charlotte last night, had dinner at a barbecue place in downtown Mooresville. I'm a NASCAR fan as well as NHRA fan or drag racing fan, so it was a great trip. We're back now though. Boy, did I miss my shop. I couldn't wait to get back and just touch and feel everything. But here we are. Tonight we're going to talk about the Lenco, in this case the ST1200 4-speed. Last time you saw it, I just finished assembling the sections, and I believe I had stuck the bearing retainer and the input shaft on it. This is not finished, nothing's tight on the front, but I did tighten all the other bolts and installed the shifter. Lots to talk about just in the shifter area, so let's start there. If you watch a lot of in-car camera shots, got a hole in my glove, you'll see when the car launches that the levers all kind of inertia sends them backwards. That really can't be avoided because each section, hang on a second, I found that glove annoying. Each section has this adjustable collar right here. Now there's two ways to shift the Lenco. You can have lever shift, or you can have air pods and CO2 or air. The air pod also screws right into the case right here, and it's adjustable for height. Now the air pod is much more efficient than the lever because it just hammers down, makes the shift. And again, you don't have to weaken up the ability to pull it so a human can do it. You got a very concentrated cylinder and it just hammers it home instantly, period. So to put the air pod in, you wind it all the way down, you back it off a turn and a half, they tell you the spec, and it's done. With the lever shift, they actually make this piece that looks like a rooster right here. I can't see my hand on the camera, but this piece here, this longer, so you would take this off. I have quick pins in each hole right now, but they make a special bolt. And you put the checking lever in here, and there's an actual fish scale, like when you catch a fish and you want to weigh it, the old school brass fish scale. You hook it on there and you pull it, and it's supposed to be between basically 35 and 50 pounds. However, because the way it's made, if you've seen my Hirsch shifter videos, I like a lot of adjustment. In this, you have to turn this 180 each time to get the lever back in. So that's raising the height. And it's basically, there's only one spot where it makes any sense. Inside, on the rotating shift mechanism, there is a rod end that's adjustable. There's a ball that this pushes on the end of the rod end. They tell you that's set at the factory not to adjust it, but if some strange case you couldn't get the right pull in that range, 35 to 50 pounds on your fish scale, you could adjust it. Again, they don't recommend it. I didn't have to. So, like I said, a lot of times when you launch, you're gonna see this. You don't even notice it when you're driving it because your hand is on this one. So for those that haven't watched the other video or don't understand, each section right now with all the levers forward is making a ratio. The planet gears are traveling around the sun, and until you pull, there we go, and lock this section 1 to 1, and now these two are making reduction, that's how you shift a Lenco. This is pretty fierce, you saw me pull it. And this is incorrect adjustment. Now, you can see the taller lever has a lot more leverage than the shortest lever, and they do make up for it some in the design of the little rooster piece, but it is what it is. So, to do a burnout, you'll see the line lock button is on this one. Lenco, in their instructions, want you to, you can do it pulling up to the water box because you still have, you know, basically each one's about a 1.40. So let's just round up to 1.5 to 1 ratio. So you pull these two back as you're approaching the water box, and now you're gonna dump the clutch. You're gonna pull through the water, do whatever you gotta do. Dump the clutch, immediately pull high gear, pull out of your burnout and push in the clutch. And then you kind of just hammer forward. It's a pretty fierce rig. Now, my buddy who owned this transmission for years eventually had shoulder problems, and he had to go, they make an air shifter with levers. Most, if you look inside an alcohol funny car that still runs a 3-speed Lenco, they usually just have a manual air button that they push. So you push for second, push for third. They make it this cute little CO2. It looks just like this, but it has, you know, and there's no effort. So that's what he's gone to. And I was lucky enough to get the levers with this transmission. Typically you don't. This is all extra. On the racing version, on the street version, I do believe for the same price, they give you the shifter mechanism. But forward and reverse. The early Lencos didn't have neutral in the reverser. This is this section back here. All this piece does is make you go forward and backwards. And yes, you can have 4 speeds backwards if you want to. Back in the day, they do a long smoky burnout, you'd hear them shifting in reverse. So, kind of cool. But anyway, you'll also see, like at the end of the burnout, a lot of times they can't get it in reverse. And they have to bump the car because there's, see, I can't do that, but if I bump the drive shaft, it'll go right in. So, in practice, you know, if you do a burnout, you're gonna have to back up. Before the car stops rolling, you have the clutch in. You don't want to grind it, but you get a feel for it, and you were able to do this. This is in the sweet spot right now. You just saw the yoke turn though. You can do it without even it being a problem, but if you just come to a stop with the brakes on and go to move the lever, a lot of times it's not going to go into gear. Another interesting Lenco problem, if you will, is how do you park it without it rolling away? If you leave it, like, you know, when you haul it on the trailer, they say you should haul it in neutral, not leave the reverser in gear. And depending on how you mount the shifters as to which direction is forward and reverse, so you have to figure that out. So that, for me, I believe is forward, yep. So I'm actually gonna move the lever backwards, and if I go like this, I'm backing up. If you move the section and end up stroking this the wrong way, like if I put them back here, it's probably going to work backwards. So you can mount, typical mounting, you hardly ever see it on the front sections. That's just weird. Mid-mount shifter, this is obviously on the back, and you can also go way back on the reverser. And I'm hoping I need to mock this back up in the car that I can reach the levers eyeballing it. I forgot to do it when I had it mocked up in the car. I think my steering wheel's about here, and if I can reach the steering wheel, then I can reach the shifter, because you need to have room to go like this. In my last race car, I had a 5-speed Lenco. I didn't know at the time, but I actually kind of sat in the car crooked. I made the mistake of taking my beloved 5-speed out and putting an automatic transmission, a Power Glide in it, because I got a small taste of winning and thought I could win more with the 5-speed, and then I ended up breaking the Power Glide on the 7th pass, and that's the last pass I ever made in the car. I sold it. So I found that with the automatic, now I'm sitting straight in the roll cage, and it wasn't as comfortable. I was used to sitting like this, and I had more room because I had to have, you know, room to pull. I never missed a shift. The transmission was really fun. This should be interesting as well. I have to move it back to the rear section. I'll have to make a bracket, and I can use the same mounting piece here where the rods are, and I'll have to make all new levers. These are nice and polished. This is a really nice setup. I'm hoping I can use it. For oil, did I answer the parking question? You have to have it in forward or reverse and at least one section shifted. So if you shift one of these and put it in forward or reverse, the opposite direction of where you don't want to roll. So if you're sitting uphill, you need to put it in reverse, I believe. I was always tied to my golf cart, so I've had to ask my buddy, how do you keep from rolling away? He tells the story when he first put this in the car rolled away in the pits. Now his car is beautiful, and it would have been tragic if it actually rolled into something, but he caught it and learned a lesson. And to basically not trust it, he keeps a little wheel chock in the car too, I believe. This problem is compounded if you don't have a clutch and you have a torque converter drive. Now you don't have a physical connection to the engine with the engine off. You're relying on this to stop you, and again, I told the story. I asked Royce Payton, has the Nightman Mustang. It's a giant blown Lenco equipped street driven Mustang. He takes it on power tour and sick week and etc. And he said the same thing. Shift one section and put the reverser in gear and it'll stay. And his home track, now closed, was Bandamere Speedway in Colorado, which the staging lanes are downhill, so it must work. A traditional racing Lenco, the CS1, 2, 3, etc., the front section is completely different. It has the weird smile bolt pattern I talked about built into the front section, cast into it. So your front section was different than your middle sections. Kind of annoying. I like this bolt-on adapter better. Yes, there's more bolts, but each section is cast the same. The reason why Lenco, I didn't explain it last time, has the half-moon bolt pattern offset is because typically there's a clutch adjusting window that fits right in over here. They wanted to put the hole away from the driver, but still have access to adjust the clutch, and that happens to fit in the opening in that bolt pattern. So this will typically be run with a single disc or a street style twin disc clutch. You can have an adjustable clutch and you'll have to have a different window, but you're not going to fit it on the Lenco only bell housing, which has that big window. So oil, each section takes 3/4 of a quart. Some people use ATF or something like that. This was run with, I think he had 1030 in it. I thought I ran straight 30 weight, but it might have been 1030. I'll have to look it up on Lenco's website, but motor oil is the deal. And you can, each section, because they're all cast the same, has a fill and a drain plug, and you can fill each section if that makes you happy, but it will run in between. There's holes in the bottom of the transmission, so you could fill it all in one section, and it's going to run in the whole transmission. So you can just add it up 3/4 and maybe a half in the reverse, a half a quart. So you have to change it fairly often because of what's going on inside. You are shifting clutches, which is going to make some material, hopefully not a lot, and there's no cooling. So if you're street driving it, it's something to look for. But again, you can run the cheapest motor oil you could find. You could run the most expensive motor oil. He never ran a vent in these 1/2-inch plugs. One of these is getting a screw-in vent with a mushroom cap like you see on a truck transmission, because you got to vent the case. And one section vent will vent the entire transmission. So that's my plan. The yoke is really neat because the output shaft is sealed on this aluminum collar, and the splines are external, so you have to lube the yoke. Otherwise, over time, come on, I mean, you're running metal on metal. In an automatic transmission, you'd have lube, or a manual transmission where the seal is over the yoke, but this is wide open. It's kind of definitely a unique design, but you have to lubricate the splines. Unfortunately, he did, and this is all in perfect shape. Before I can install this into my bell housing, one, I need a clutch, and I haven't purchased a clutch. This one would technically work. I'd have to get a disc for it, and I happen to have a Mopar 18 spline input shaft that I need to machine anyway. It's too long. It's, you know, different manufacturers have different size pilot bushings, splines on the clutch, the OD of the bearing retainer. So this is going to require lathe work. You also have to set the end play. Right now I can move the input shaft in and out. You have to measure the distance between the pilot bushing and the end of the splines. You need about 90 to 100 thousandths end play on the input shaft. You don't want more than that, and you don't want less than that. It needs to be able to float in there and not push into the transmission or push into the crankshaft or the bearing. So they have a measurement procedure. It's relatively straightforward, and then you shorten the input shaft accordingly. On like a Chevy application, if you're familiar where the pilot bushing normally goes in the crank, or they sell the little pilot bearing, you don't use that register all the way in. They make a bearing that goes in the next register, the bigger one, and that's what Lenco uses because they wanted the big bearing there, and that makes the input shaft a little shorter, but it's not going to be a direct fit into your pilot bushing. This one, if you bought, you can call them up, so you got a stock depth Chevy bell housing, you got a 1 1/8" 26 spline or 10 spline input, and they can sell you one that fits without having to cut it. Me, I don't mind doing a little machine work. The OD of this bearing retainer, which looks brand new, does not fit my bell housing, but it's too big, and that means I can machine it. That's a good thing. The splines should work out fine. I just have to make the pilot bushing fit my Chevrolet engine. Fortunately, back in the day of the Doug Nash 5-speed, like in Modified Eliminator and all those cars, they all ran. That was the hot setup back then. The Mopar 18 spline clutch disc with the pilot cut down to fit a Chevrolet. That was the deal. Still is in some areas. Probably the gasser type movement that's going on, they might still run the Chrysler clutch. In Lenco stuff, if you call them up, 1 3/8" 10, which is a pretty big input shaft, that's what Ford used in their big top loaders. When I ran my 5-speed Lenco behind my 572 big block Chevy, I had the Ford clutch size, 1 3/8" diameter, 10 spline. That's the most popular in the big multi-disc clutches. So it's kind of funny how they took an OEM size and just went with it. Let's just pick the biggest one and make everybody run that. So the smaller 5-speed stuff like the Doug Nash got kicking around here, like I said, back in the 70s and 80s, the Mopar clutch was the deal. The Chevrolet input shaft is only 1 1/8" diameter in either 10 or 26 spline. It's just smaller and weaker. And but if you buy like a G-Force, T10 version of that's a very stout transmission, and it still runs a Chevrolet spline. So you can get it in different splines, but that is not apparently a weak link. So, but traditional thinking, bigger is better. So that's it for tonight. I'm glad to be back to making regular videos and working here in the shop. You can travel all around the world, but there really is no place like home. This time, I really miss the old shop. So this is a second vacation in a couple months. That's unusual, and probably won't make a habit out of it, but opportunity came up and we took it to see the world a little bit. And that's not always a bad thing, to see things that aren't in your normal culture. Take her easy. Have a good night.